Welcome to the Art of Becoming Whole, where we explore the edges of the human experience from the meditation cushion to the therapy room and beyond. My name is Kevin Stansbury. I'm a licensed clinical social worker in California and an intuitive holistic psychotherapist.
My name is Justin Tang. I'm a certified hypnotist, a trauma-informed coach, and more importantly, I'm a counseling practicum student in grad school, and I'm learning so much. And I love these conversations.
Cool. It's my birthday. Uh, so
Yay!
uh, Go ahead and sing for me.
This is not part of the agreement.
So I am 37. Um, and we were just talking about this offline, but just birthdays and what they bring up. And I've always liked my birthday, I think. I don't know if, yeah, mostly. I've mostly always liked my birthday. I think it is a typical Leo thing that I like to be celebrated and I like to celebrate myself, I guess. And so that's always been true. I like to get gifts. That's fun. But there's also just, I think ever since I was, I don't know, 20, uh, ever since I started on this path of spiritual awakening and personal development and growth and all that jazz, that every year feels, mm, I guess significant. Like I like to do a life review and I just get this feeling of like um it's an appraisal of where I'm at and how I feel about myself and how I feel about my life and it brings up a lot of stuff and it could bring up, I think for me it brings up a lot of gratitude and like my some softening in my heart often around my birthday. It's like even if I typically have a lot of criticism and judgment about myself and where I'm at, that something about my birthday softens it. And it's just like, oh, okay. Like life is precious and it really highlights that for me. So, so I love birthdays. That's the gist. Uh, and and in recent years, actually probably just the last year, uh, it's changed a bit where even not around my birthday, I started to really feel my age. Where like whereas before it didn't, my mind didn't quite do this, but like even last year I was thinking, okay, I'm 36 now. That's like on the I'm in my upper 30s and that's pretty close to 40 and 40 is pretty close to 50 and so on and so on and I'm basically dead.
That's it. Your life's over. That's it.
And I know it's all relative, and uh, I hear people in their 50s and 60s saying, like, oh, you're in your 30s, you're like a baby. That's like super young,
Yeah.
and I could see that, that looking back on when I was 19 or 20, now I'm like, oh, like that's you're a baby if you're that old. Um, and so much is in store. So yeah, I just want to open up this conversation. I don't know if there's anything in particular on your heart about it.
Yeah. Well, first, I just want to comment. I think that's what you're doing is very healthy. Having some kind of objective appraisal that leads to gratitude and leads to a softening of your heart. I think that's great, right? That's like, and if you compound that, right, like every year you had that appraisal and you softened your heart just like 1%, 2%, you had a little bit more gratitude, reminded yourself of that. that compounds over time, right? Theoretically. And then you just feel more and more gratitude, right? The more you do it. So I think that's awesome. I think that's very healthy. But I know you said things have changed a little bit in the last year.
Oh, well, not the gratitude piece.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah.
I think you're right. I think it has, in a way, compounded. I mean, sometimes it feels like I'll feel some gratitude around my birthday and then I'll just like forget about it a week later.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I do think there's a sense of I've also had this attitude around since around the same age that I mentioned of every year gets better,
That's good.
and it just seems true to me. Like it's not a spin. I don't feel like I'm putting a spin on it. It's like it's interesting because, for example, the last like few years have maybe been some like the hardest years of my life, but to me, I, well, I want to say objective, but I guess it's subjective, whatever. But it's just clearly, even with all of that, it was still better. Like I was still in a better place with myself than I was the previous year or the previous year. It's like the relationship always gets better.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a very healthy assumption, like a good positive belief to have, which then then you see evidence of that, right? And it becomes true. It's kind of this self-fulfilling prophecy or like a feedback loop, right? It's interesting when you said that. I was like, do I have that belief? No. And I think that's really good to actually like that's a good belief to model.
Hmm.
Um when I and I think that's part of my problem. So it was my birthday like 1 or 2 weeks ago, and it brought up a lot of feelings. And I don't know if I do like an objective appraisal and it leads to gratitude. I think it just depends. Um, not to say like every year has been bad or anything. I think yeah, again, it kind of depends, but I think maybe more than half I've made it mean something negative about either my life, myself, or something else. And I don't know where I was going with that. This belief, right? Just checking in, I realized just now, like I had this belief, like, oh, every year is like the same. And I think that's the issue, is that I'm viewing things the same rather than getting better.
Yeah, listening to you, I realized that maybe it doesn't happen on my birthday because, like I said, there's like a special kind of celebratory attitude of gratitude. Uh, but just in terms of every so often reflecting on my age, that, um, well, especially in my 30s, I think that there's been more of a tendency to feel like, uh, in terms of the physical reality of my life, that it's not where I think it should be. And so I'm making that distinction between that sort of thing of like, oh, I'm 37. Let me look at my whatever, my bank account, my business, my education, everything, and where am I at, my housing situation, just all of it, um, compared to my relationship with myself.
You compare it to your relationship with yourself.
Or I mean, like, uh, these are two separate categories of
Oh,
things.
got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, fair enough. I do think I am in agreement with you, right? Like, I think every year I just become more self-aware. I feel like I'm, for the most part, releasing or letting go of old emotions, patterns. I'm just becoming more and more uh, aware of what's in my unconscious and how it works. And so, in that sense, I feel like things are getting better.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. Um, how do you feel, I guess in this year, do you feel gratitude? Um, Geez. So I opened with that, and then now I'm like thinking like, oh wait, maybe we should go in these different directions here, or maybe they're connected, and okay. Um,
Do it all, baby.
do it all. So, um, do you feel gratitude and simultaneously feel the weight of getting older? Is that what's happening?
Yes. Yeah, yeah. I mean, particularly for me, part of it is that I want a family. I want to find a partner, someone to be with, and I want to have kids. And so I know as men, we don't have the same sort of time limitations as women when it comes to having kids. So it doesn't matter, I could have kids when I'm 60 or whatever. But I just don't want to. I don't want to be an old ass dad. Um, I would like to get going. Uh, I'm thinking in the next 3 years. Um,
Okay.
so there's a sense of my mortality and in a way that I'm running out of time.
Right. Right.
I mean, for some reason I've always thought of middle age as 50. Uh,
Yeah.
but like that's the actual middle age is more like uh
40?
40,
Is it?
40, 41, 42, something around there. So like I'm approaching the
Middle
cut.
aged. Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure that's a fun time.
Well, and I was thinking yesterday I think that I was thinking about 18-year-olds and well until today I was 18 years older than an 18-year-old. So like I've spent as much
Wow.
I've spent as much time being an adult as being a child, and now one day more, or I guess technically 1 year more, but
Yeah. Wow. That is weird to think about, honestly.
and 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 my inner critic says, and what do I have to show for it?
Yeah. That's where I'm at too.
And everyone's different. I know I've met and I see out there people in their 20s who become financially really successful. Um, and so, again, and this is like a our society thing. I don't know exactly how it is in other cultures, but the emphasis on status and achievement as measured by things,
Yeah.
money and things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't totally buy it. Like I don't totally buy into it. But there is still something to it of even I mean it's represented by money and things, but it's just like it is about achievement. It is about what have I created? What have I brought into this world? Um, how am I living my life?
Yeah. But is it like, and I'm sure that achievement is a big thing for men. Um, you and I are part of a group, and we've been talking about a men's group that, we've been talking about achievement and uh, possibly the burden of performance that men have to shoulder. But I am wondering though, yeah, it's like the money and the things are the symbol. But so like if say today you won the lottery as a like a birthday gift, um, would there be the need for achievement on your end?
That's a great question. Um, I mean, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I think so. For me,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
this might not be true for a lot of people, like a lot of people, I think, really want money so that they can relax and, yeah, just like do whatever you want.
Yeah. That sounds great.
But for me, whatever I want would include a lot of what I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like this is what I love to do. And so it would, if I won the lottery, the benefit would be that I could, um, instead of what I'm doing now, which is trying to build up to a place where I have more financial freedom so that I can structure my schedule differently. Uh, I could do that immediately, but
Yeah.
I would still be doing a lot of the same stuff, just
Fair.
in a slightly more relaxed way, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I would too, honestly. I mean, obviously, I would have more vacations and shit, different explorations. We won't call them vacations. Different, a lot of different explorations that I could do. Yeah.
Yeah, and this ties in a bit to all everything because um, this is just my particular situation, but I think a lot of people go through something like this, where in their 20s, maybe early 30s, they make bad decisions, like bad, particularly financial decisions, and then probably around my age or around mid 30s, um, we start to reevaluate or we feel the burden of those decisions, and like for me, I'm still paying for them,
Yeah.
literally.
Right.
Um, and uh, so there's something about, I mean, there can be a lot of guilt, I think, guilt and shame about it, and that I should have done it differently and whatever. Um, and then also there's like the weight of just recovering from that so that I can
Right.
get to a steady baseline that then I can build off of.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for me, there's this added story. And I think I mentioned that, you know, I think particularly with this birthday, there were definitely a lot of emotions that were coming up, but then I kind of both repressed and suppressed it. Um, but one of the deeper things I feel that this birthday in particular has kind of brought up is like, what does that mean about me? And having this added story of, well, shit, look at all the times I've failed, right? That I thought that I was gonna be successful in XYZ endeavor, and I just like perceived failure and like, perceived failure. And then like I have this added story of, well, crap, I've done all this stuff. What's the point? You know, I've tried it. I think there's another layer to that, but I forgot, which is probably good. Don't want to repeat the old story. Yeah. Yeah. So like overcoming even like the self-doubt that comes with all the failure. I don't know if that's something that you are dealing with. That's something particularly alive for me, which I'm working through.
Are these like, I mean, you don't have to get into the details, but is it? financial failure.
Yeah, I mean, it's tied to that. It's business slash personal projects, things that I felt like were meaningful or that would have benefited my life in some way, right? Made me more successful. Um, and then yeah, just feeling like, man, I've tried all these things and it didn't seem to pan out. And that means something about me, right? Like and I think a pattern that I deal with is the self blame a lot, inward anger, like inverted anger, which
Mm,
Freud said that depression is just inverted anger. Now I think that's a little bit too dogmatic and it's not true in every situation, but I think it's very true for a good amount of people who have this particular personality, you know.
mm.
But yeah, so like I kind of just blame myself and then I look at all the failures and it kind of erodes that self, I don't know, it's self-confidence if you want to call it that, or trust, or uh, yeah, I just start to look at things through the lens of failure.
So you sparked a memory for me, which my first therapist, who I saw for a long time, he would always focus on his focus was confidence and self-worth. It was like basically every conversation went back to that for 10 years. And I'm not mad about it. I mean, it's like some core stuff. And he made this distinction, which I haven't really heard anyone make, and I don't know if I've shared it here, between uh, self-worth and self-esteem. Have I talked about this?
No, no, I would love to hear it.
Okay. So he would say that self-esteem is variable, always. It's like always dependent on the context, the day, um, the weather, whatever. And so the example he always gave sports examples. So he would talk about be like a coach in a locker room before a game giving a speech to hype up the team. He's trying to raise their self-esteem. He's trying to get them to temporarily feel like they're capable. Um, but the thing about that is it'll work if it's a good speech, I guess. It'll work, and the team gets all pumped up. And then once everyone goes out on the field, the people that have low self-worth, as soon as shit starts to go awry, their self-esteem plummets. And the people that have higher self-worth, they're able to weather that because that's not a variable experience in terms of like short term. Over the long term it can change, but like if you have a higher degree of self-worth, then it's like you're not if you miss the shot or whatever, you're not going to immediately spiral into I'm a piece of shit for missing that shot and I get it together. And then you're all up in your head and you're putting pressure on yourself and it makes you perform even worse. And so I really like this distinction because it seems true to me. It's like that we have this more stable structure of self-worth and that you can do work on that. And over time that can get better. And if it gets better, it will not get worse again.
Interesting. Interesting.
But the self-esteem thing is the thing that can fluctuate.
Change. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's I have to definitely take a look more into that. In terms of definitions of like self-esteem, self-worth. I the way I think about it is, and I think this is similar, there's a difference between core confidence and situational confidence or
Mm,
context confidence. So like you could hate yourself and have low self-esteem or I guess self-worth, but you can still rock it at like football. You know, you just have that competency and you just have that confidence in that
mm,
particular context. And perhaps for whatever reason, you're just good at like separating, making that barrier, or maybe you just never made that connection between your self-worth or self-love and performance on the field, you know. Or
yeah.
perhaps you could say it's the difference between they have a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, at least in this particular area.
Mm.
Um, but I think core confidence I think that's more of what you're talking about in terms of self-worth, usually stemming from childhood.
Yeah,
Maybe. Yeah.
stemming from childhood, and then if you do lots of work for years on yourself.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I was bringing it up because of what you said about going through these things that we might define as failures, and then feeling like it's a reflection on yourself, and like it means something about you rather than what you just said, which is like having more of a growth mindset of, well,
Right.
you've just been learning this whole time.
True. Right. So there's a saying in NLP, which is great, that says there's no such thing as failure, only feedback,
Mm.
which I think is a beautiful belief. Now, I think I can know that consciously, whereas unconsciously, it hasn't quite sunk in, at least at that level or that particular scenario.
You know, I feel like you said this at one point before, but just how we can have our old therapists or mentors' voices in our head.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah,
And so this therapist, his voice lives rent free in my head.
yeah. Dale, is it?
Yeah.
Or yeah, yeah.
And I I believe, it's been it's been 11 years since I spoke with him. So, everything I repeat from him could be me reinterpreting everything, but whatever. I think I've got most of it pretty accurate. Uh, but he was a realist. He really was, and he would have said, "No, you can fail for sure. Failure's a thing." And I do like that NLP saying, what is it? There's no failure, just
Oh,
feedback.
it's only feedback. Yeah.
And I would just amend it because of Dale's voice in my head to say that uh, sure, there's failure, but it is feedback.
Right. Right. Right.
But yeah, I guess then it depends what type of feedback you receive it as. It's not like
Yeah.
you could receive it as life telling you, "Oh yeah, you suck. You're worthless. You're never gonna amount to anything." Or you could receive the feedback as, "Oh, well that didn't work. Here's the mistakes that I made. Here's where I'm learning from it, and I'd like to do it differently."
Yeah. That's the healthy way. Yeah.
But there is that discrepancy between the conscious and unconscious mind, where consciously you might, I think you do, these things. You know that it's more helpful to have that sort of growth mindset and view it as, oh, it was a learning opportunity and I tried my best and it didn't work out. And here's the mistakes I made and maybe all that. You made a
Yeah.
fix.
No, because I'm just like thinking about what you were saying. And I'm thinking like, shit, did I try my best? And I think that's another story, right? Is uh having regret that I could have always done more. I could have been more disciplined. I could have worked harder. I could have, should have, would have done all these things, right? And then so I think maybe I didn't try my best. Like maybe, I could have pushed myself more,
Mm.
right? Could have been less negative. Like whatever it is, right? Um, and so I'm like, damn.
It is an interesting thing. Like do how does somebody know if they tried their best?
Right. Right. Because I hear another side to this, right? Another voice, which is like, well, but you at the level of growth that you had, you did your best. Right.
Mhm.
I didn't know all the things I know now. I didn't have the level of emotional maturity or XYZ that I know now or awareness. So, yeah, how does one know if they tried their best? That's a good question.
And maybe it's situational too. Like I know for sure if I think back years ago, maybe in high school in particular, but my bachelor's program too, like I could remember tests or assignments where I know for sure I didn't try my best.
Yeah.
So there are times where I know for sure I didn't try my best, but I think what you're talking about and what we're talking about maybe is more of a broad judgment of, again, the level of success that I that we were having in our life at the time. Like it wasn't just like a test or something or like one thing necessarily. It was more like everything that we were doing at the time could have we and the voice says I could have done everything better.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I guess that's the inner critic, right? No.
Yeah.
It used to be way worse, but
Yeah, and I mean thinking about it, like if I think about these big mistakes that I made in the last 5 years, it just yeah, it just completely depends on the frame. It's like I could frame it as, yeah, I could have done better because I could have just I feel every time I start to think about it, that voice, it perceives things through the frame of if I wasn't who I was at the time, then I could have done it better.
right. Is is that a bad thing?
Well, I mean, so the actual critical voice says you should have done it better. That's it. It's just full stop. But like, but when I really think about it, that's what it's saying is like it's 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 criticizing just who I was at the time. Like there is no I couldn't have done it differently, actually, because that's just like exactly where I was. The decisions I made all came from exactly where I was.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that. That's similar to the argument of yeah, like you did your best according to the level of growth that you had.
Yeah, and maybe I just disagree with the entire frame of best or worse, worst, best or worst. Like just thinking of it like that, it doesn't seem, I mean that sets it up for this misperception of what happened. Because again, it's like I just thought what I was doing was true. Like there's nothing else to it, you know? With given all the information I had and all the experience I had and how I was feeling in the moment and all the unconscious patterns that were present, that led to me doing everything exactly the way I did it. And I didn't have the additional awareness that I gained through those experiences to then reflect on it and be like, oh, wait, maybe this isn't maybe there would be a better option.
Right. Right. I think as I'm hearing that, I part of me feels sad that maybe this suffering was determined, right? I couldn't have done anything differently based upon all the experiences and programmings and conditions and all of that. And then I think I feel sad that like damn, like is it was it predetermined? Was it to yeah, was the suffering predetermined, you
Mm.
know?
Predetermined by,
By you can say life, you can say programming, you could say God if you are inclined to say that. Um yeah.
yeah, I'm just thinking about it. Because I think we've talked some about this maybe, that like I do believe we have free will. Uh, but I also believe some things are predetermined. So yeah, it's just a mixed bag of things. I certainly made a lot of choices, but the choices that I made and the choices I'm making right now too are all dependent on causes and conditions that came before. Like there is no choice that's independent of everything.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Like there's no, yeah,
Yeah.
independent of everything from the rest of my life. Like it's all the same stream. So yeah, what does that mean?
Yeah. I mean, I guess your point is we get to forgive ourselves because we couldn't have done it any better, right? I think part of me sees it, and part of me is like hyper focused on the suffering,
Mm.
you know?
Hyper focused in, but in a way that's like you said, it's sad. Like it's like
Yeah. Yeah, it
it's
feels
a sad thing you had to go through all that.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
I think about maybe some manifestation teachings. Uh, I'm thinking about Bashar right now for some reason. But just that it's presented like we actually do have a choice how much we suffer. And my mind is tying itself in knots. Um, yeah, I mean, I guess I only sort of believe that. It's like we do, but also like what are you supposed to do? You know, if you have however much unconscious baggage that you have, like that's a given from uh we'll say from childhood, maybe also from past lives. I'll just throw that out there. Um, but whatever. It's like I would say I incarnate into this life with a particular intention. There's like some sort of direction that my soul wants to move or a quality of experience it wants to have that's set. That's like what it's decided how it's going to be. And then there's, I think we talked a little bit about this. I think there's like choice points that get set in certain relationships that are just going to happen for sure. But then again, they're choice points. So it's like, as in your human incarnation, having forgotten about your true nature and yeah, who you really are, that then it's like a game. It's a simulation where you get to see what you choose, what you choose. And but anyway, I'm going on a whole fucking tangent. Uh, that we have a set amount of unconscious stuff uh, that we only have so much control over how quickly that stuff gets dealt with. If you're actively engaging with it, you've entered into a path of healing and growth, and you're learning different perspectives and modalities and stuff. Um, you and I have talked a lot about this, I think, but just and I think we agree that that you certainly have a lot of influence over that, but at the same time, there's some degree of it's only gonna come out and be healed and dealt with on life's terms, pretty much.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, we've
Through,
discussed that.
yeah, like through the just what's that? I'm thinking of a particular metaphor, but whatever. Just like through the getting tumbled around by life. Just thrown this way and that.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm resisting the tumbling,
Hmm.
Yeah. Or have, So,
And I don't know if this is true for you. I'd love to know, but with some of these mistakes that you're reflecting on and thinking about things you think you could have done better, when I'm thinking about them, and I made some big mistakes in the last handful of years. Um, Painful, really, really painful mistakes. Uh, that I also knew pretty quick, even though I was in the middle of the fallout of them and the an incredible depth of suffering that came up as a result of them. But even in that, I knew that this thing is like going to take me where I need to go. It's like all of that, and now I feel it a lot more, but it's still happening. But like I do feel it a lot more that I can look back on these things and be like, oh, that's like a turning point in my life, setting me up for the future that I actually want to experience.
right. Right. And I can take that perspective. I do think, yeah, there there are turning points for sure. And perhaps I'm in one right now, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. 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 It's going back to the belief of, oh, every year is the same, and I need to I'm changing that belief.
Mhm.
Because I think that's the thing that's screwing me. I mean, not just that thing, but there are layers to it. But that's the thing, one of the things that's screwing me up.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm searching my own experience. I have a belief that that exists simultaneously with the other belief, but is in conflict. That I don't know exactly what it is actually. It's like I do believe that it all gets better over time, but I think I also have a belief that it's like slow and painful.
right, right.
And maybe it doesn't have to be. but I
I
think
agree. Yeah.
but I think even some of my teachers have had that belief. Like like Pema Chodron, I don't know if she has that belief or had it, but the way she talked makes me think that of just like
Hmm.
she would talk about meditation practice and Buddhist practice um as like a basically really a slow and painful process. Like this is going to take decades.
Oh God.
And on the one hand, I actually think there's something really true about it. And I've started to think of things more in terms of either 5-year chunks or decades, um, as opposed to having an expectation that in the next year, everything's going to change.
Right. Right. And I think that's also where people, myself included, can go awry, right? Having this false expectation. Because I was, reflecting on my past mistakes and perceived failures, and realizing a part of that was like I had unrealistic expectations going in, and then when those weren't met, and then I plummeted down, right? And obviously there's that self-worth component, among other things. Uh, but yeah, yeah, having realistic expectations, I think that's big. And you have to know yourself too. You can't base your expectations on somebody else who's different, right? You can take it into account, but you have to know yourself.
That answered my next question, which was how do you determine what's realistic?
Past experience. I mean, yeah, like I think you have to do an inventory of yourself and see what's working, what's not, what has worked. Obviously, you have to define what that means to you. What does working even mean? But yeah, I think you also just have to sit with yourself and understand what are your patterns? What has gone on through your life? What are you inclined to do? What are your tendencies, your desires, and all these things, right? So, um, do you even or are you self-aware? Right? Or to what degree? So I think it's just a matter of sitting with yourself, maybe even asking friends or family or people that you trust, right? But yeah, there's like a lot of different things that you can do to kind of assess yourself. And then you have to test it too. That's the ultimate thing. Ultimately, you just have to test it and see, implement it, and then see what happens and see if there's something needs to be tweaked.
Yeah. Yeah, good answer.
Yeah. Yeah, because I realized, and this might be a story on my end, right? This could be a limiting belief that I need to look at, and then I kind of just need to put on I don't know, it's a back burner, but just kind of hold it in abeyance. But um, it seems to me, in my experience in the past, that the standard personal development type of advice didn't seem to stick or work with me. You know, the
Mm.
whole like create a vision board. Yeah, yeah, positive thinking, set smart goals, all these different things, right? And I think those are actually very helpful. Those are really, really, really good. Again, you just have to figure out like what is actually working, where is the bottleneck, and then trying to analyze the situation, much like a more like a mechanic would analyze your car or whatever, your computer, something, right? You figure out, oh, where is the problem? What's the root cause? And then once you can find that, then you can resolve the issue. But that might take a little bit, or there might be maybe there's multiple causes, right? Uh, yeah.
I have an idea that I'd like to run by you. That I just started thinking about it this way this past week. Uh, that maybe it's a typology thing. That like I'm an artist, and I think that there's maybe this might be totally overly simplified, but it seems to me like there might be okay, my bias is this that I'm an artist and so I view everything through this lens and I believe that it should work for everybody.
Fair
Uh,
enough. Yeah.
and that is my bias and I don't think it's totally right. Um, but maybe there are artists and then there are like I want to call them mathematicians. And that depending on what your typology is, you can either do it this way or do it that way. And the that way would be what you just described of the mathematician way would be like the SMART goals and the it's a very mind-driven movement forward.
Right. Right.
Which the reason I have the bias that I have is because I don't believe that's in alignment with reality. In terms of like the true nature of reality, which is not mind driven.
Fair. So even me using the analogy of a mechanic and diagnosing what the root cause might be, would that be
You could be an artist and a mechanic.
okay? Okay. Yeah. Uh, I do think typology has to do a lot, like personality type, 100%. Like it, whether you are a night owl or a morning person, or it's like you're trying to fight against the nature of things. You can do it. Um, and sometimes I think that's necessary, but I think it's better to figure out what your strengths are and how you actually work and what works for you rather than trying to fit into a specific mold, right? Trying to fit a square peg into a round hole.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe I'm just thinking I'm trying to unravel my own bias here that we've said it before in different ways, but just that not everyone's interested in awakening, and you don't have to be. And I think for people who aren't, that maybe some of these more what I would call mathematical or formulaic ways of approaching life will actually take. Like it'll work. And that's fine. But it doesn't work for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I actually think this is like maybe I don't know if this is the right usage of this word, but I'll just, colloquially it like an epidemic of artists trying to be mathematicians because our society just values that more and thinks that that is it's held as like the absolute truth.
Hmm.
Everything's about this formulaic approach of optimizing yourself and optimizing your life. And here's how you do it. And here's the research around it and the science. And it's very cut and dry steps.
Yeah.
And oh my God, to me, that's like death. Sucks the life out of everything.
I I actually kind of like this. Well, let me shelve it for a second because I'm just curious. What do you think I am? Do you think I'm an artist or something else? I'm sure there's more types, right? But
Yeah. Yeah. I think that you are, uh, yeah, maybe I want to say that you're in the process of discovering that you're more of an artist than you thought.
It was funny because um so my childhood dream was to become an artist.
Like a
Uh
what? Like a painter?
Cartoonist.
Oh, okay.
Well, no, yeah, I never really got into painting. I just loved drawing. And that comes from my dad and my brother is awesome too. My brother's like really good. He's just good at everything. He's one of those people.
Hmm.
Uh, but yeah, I wanted to be a cartoonist and then in middle school I'm like, nah. Or high school I was like, no, I want to be a musician. And then in college like, no, 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 I want to be a philosopher theologian. All all very stable jobs, you know. Uh, so, but I it's interesting that you say that. Yeah, maybe because I feel like maybe part of me has somehow either locked away this artist side or suppressed or you know, I don't know exactly where the drive is because I would like to be more creative. But I also appreciate people who are systematic and they're more kind of more logic, mathematic driven. Because then I'm like, oh, I can see the logic, I can see the steps. Like, oh wow, like I never thought of it like that. Um, and I admire almost like the competency that they have in that world, if that makes sense. It's like they're just so they make so much logical sense, and I'm like, oh, I can't even argue with that, right? Type of thing.
Yeah.
There's also yeah, there's like an admiration of their mastery of that arena. I think that's what I'm attracted to.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a great appreciation for it, and I also feel it's like I can feel the conditioning, societal and familial, around it, where it's like I should be that way.
Right.
And like all these successful people and all these influencers or whatever who are very systematic, and even all these therapists and healers who have really systematic modalities and all that, there's a part of me that has and still does doubt has doubted and still does doubt myself, and thinks that I should be like that.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
as I'm formulating my own holistic framework here, that my mind goes in that direction because it's like, well, I want to make it clear. I want people to be able to understand it.
Sure. Yeah.
It has to be systematic and it has to be step by step. And it's like, yeah, but there is there is something there. There's like a partial truth there, but but then also there's just the truth of me and my nature and my approach, and that also my framework is a framework for artists.
Yeah. Fair. Fair. How do you see discipline tying into this? Because I know in the last several weeks, that's probably been a topic that's come up for you. Um, yeah, where does discipline kind of fit into all of that?
Yeah, so probably several months it's been
Fair.
really
Yeah.
really alive for me, and an area of great struggle because my mind still thinks that I should do it the way that other people do it, particularly the way that these people that we're talking about, the mathematicians, or maybe there's a better name we can give them. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
The system.
Engineers,
Oh,
maybe? Or
oh, I like that.
okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's good. Engineers. Um, yeah. That my mind thinks that I should operate like that, and I don't think there are very many, if any, artists out there that I can think of, uh, who are talking about discipline in a way that makes sense to me. Um, or I can't think of any artists talking about discipline at all, unless they are more of the engineer type. Like you could be an engineer type and an artist.
Got it.
Um,
Yeah.
but Like everyone talks about discipline in through the engineer frame, which is consistency. Push yourself to do it no matter how you feel. Create the structure, stick with the structure, and all of that. And I don't think that these things are necessarily wrong. In fact, to me, it does seem inevitable in terms of like the way that you impact physical reality has to be through consistency.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Like that's the only way I got my degrees, my license, my just everything, even just being the level of self-awareness that I'm at, like everything has been through a consistent application of intent.
Right. So then wouldn't that be the way, right? Like it's
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so this is the difficulty because because all of that's true, and yet none of the things that I did felt like none of them had the energy that I feel is attached to the engineer mindset. And when they're talking about discipline and they're talking about consistency, they're talking about the same thing that I just talked about, but the energy behind it feels different to me. It feels forceful. And like they often, I don't, certainly probably not true for everyone, but most of the time, I feel their unconscious shame. I feel their unconscious shame, guilt, pressure, judgment that they're using to force themselves to do things. And that's the thing that doesn't work for me.
Hmm. Hmm.
And everything that I've accomplished in my life, which I like to downplay because to me it doesn't seem like enough. But I still am where I am, and it's cool that now I'm licensed and I have my business and it's doing well, and we do this podcast, and like there are a lot of things that I do that I don't give myself enough credit for, um, and that required consistency, but none of them actually came from force. It was like it
Yeah.
was alignment.
Right. Right.
It just felt like, oh yeah, this is the way to go. This is the thing to do. And then I just did the thing.
Yeah.
And it just so happened that those things have systems set up that require consistency, like going to school.
Sure.
Like I made the decision that I want the degree, so I guess I'll just do this thing. And so I feel like this is still an active discovery, so I don't maybe the language will become more clear, but there is something there's something about the artist's approach to this, which is like it's a well, yeah, I like alignment. Alignment's a good word. It's just about a moment to moment alignment.
Yeah. Yeah. I think maybe you are articulating some kind of deep, I don't know, it's a fear or something that maybe I've been thinking about just or it's just kind of been in the back of my mind, right? Because I resonate so much with manifestation. And I feel like manifestation is more or less more of like a feminine way of doing things,
Mhm.
right? Creating via intent rather than force, power versus force, right? And I love that topic, right? And then there's a part of me that feels like, well, am I not cheating? Well, I'm not putting in the work, right? I'm not being more consistent or disciplined, right? Like I'm not doing the more masculine thing that could be required of me or would result in better success, right? Yeah, I guess maybe that I've been thinking about that too. I'm like, yeah, maybe like I should stop doing the manifestation stuff because that's more like maybe it's wishful thinking or it's too, too easy. I don't know if it's too, yeah. I mean, I don't know if I'm making sense here, but I think you're touching on something that I've kind of had in the back of my mind.
Yes, and I'm glad you said that because you know, I don't remember how much we got into it in previous episodes, but there was a time for years, a good decade at least, where I was very heavily involved in like masculine work and masculine and feminine polarity and all that stuff. And okay, I'm gonna just go. I'm gonna tell a story.
All right, let's hear it.
So I don't know. I don't remember when I realized it, but it was probably mid 20s. I remember being like 26 and thinking consciously, I hate masculinity. And a lot of this had to do with like resentment that I had toward my dad and um, feeling like I didn't have an idea of like there was no sense of positive masculinity in my life um, at the time. And yeah, so I had this like pretty intense judgment about it. And so for a while it was like I was leaning into femininity and uh I'm remembering a woman that I dated and she said this is when I was 25 and she said you you're like a really feminine man. And I remember well I went into agreement with it. I was like, yeah. But I also remember looking back on it, I didn't know at the time, it was totally unconscious, but a feeling. There was a feeling there of like, ooh, I don't like that. Something doesn't feel right about that. But that's just where I was at. And so I was in this phase of like of hating masculinity, leaning into my femininity, then got into a long-term relationship, uh, got more exposed to these masculine, feminine polarity teachings, and then I started to want to be more masculine. And and there was a lot of judgment and shame about that too, of like feeling like I wasn't masculine enough. And and that judgment and shame lasted for a long time, probably until like a year ago. Um, so for many years. Um, yeah, just thinking, yeah, it's just a foundational judgment of who I am, that I'm not masculine enough. So bringing it all back. So what you said brought this up for me because uh shit, I lost my train of thought. Uh oh, because I think that's been part of the judgment is that there was an intuitive sense that that whole thing that these men that I judge or that I assess as masculine, they're masculine, they're engineers, they're systematic, they're disciplined, structure, all of that stuff, it gets packaged into the masculine teachings.
Yeah, right.
And and so then I would be like, oh, well, I am failing there. I'm not masculine enough.
Hmm.
I need more structure. I need more discipline. I need more control. I need blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
But what's been unfolding, maybe in the last year, maybe a little longer, I don't know, is this other recognition of this artistic thing that like actually it doesn't matter to me if we call it masculine or feminine at the end of the day, um but it's just my style. Like my style is this more artistic thing which we could call more feminine. And and that's fine. I don't feel feminine. Like I still feel energetically, I feel like my home is more on the masculine side of things. That just feels resonant to me. Uh, but but it also doesn't matter. And and it's just like a typology thing. It's like this is just who I am. I just seem to be oriented in this way. And what works for me is leaning into that space of creativity and fluidity and um, flow. It's like way more about flow than about structure.
Right. Right.
And structure can be part of flow, but it's flexible structure.
Yes.
I have to be very flexible.
Yeah.
And if I'm not, I suffer. That's how we know who we are. It's like if I do a particular thing and I suffer, then that thing's not for me. It
Yeah.
highlights it highlights what I'm not, which then accentuates what I am.
And I think maybe I guess my immediate pushback, not necessarily immediate as I thought about it. Um, I think there's a distinction between suffering and doing something uncomfortable.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Because I think people, at least for me, I think like, oh, but technically I suffer at the gym. It's like it's not pleasant, you know. Um, but then there's also a weird pleasure I get from it too. Right. And so even though I do suffer, I suffer, but it's also kind of a weird, nice suffering.
Yeah, and I don't know for sure, some of the definitions of masculinity and femininity and what we lump into these categories, I don't feel completely sure about it, nor do I think it matters all that much at the end of the day. However, it has been a helpful exploration for me. Uh, and that maybe that what you just described, which I would call type two fun, uh, which I my friend Jake had told me a story of I think it was some climber who talked about this in a climbing documentary or something that type 1 and type 2 fun. Type 1 fun is it's comfortable. It's like sitting on a tropical beach sipping margaritas or whatever. It's like it's fun, but it's easy fun. And then type two fun is you put on a heavy pack and you hike out deep into the forest to find a good climbing spot and it's absolutely miserable and so hot and heavy and you're so exhausted at the end. But at the end you're like, that was awesome.
I got you. I got you. Yeah.
Even though it was miserable.
Right.
And I like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe that's more of a masculine quality.
I think so. I think it can be. And I think I kind of want to tie it into something we talked about earlier, if I can remember now. Um, it's this issue of flow. And I mean, I guess I'm using it more in the scientific way, where flow occurs when the challenge, crap, what was it? Dang it, how do you define flow? It's where challenge meets your level of skill, I think. And so if
Uh,
there's not enough challenge, it's too easy. There's not really a flow. But if it's too challenging, and that's I think where I went wrong is like then I'll just like I'll crumble.
mm.
And so there's no flow. But there has to be enough tension and enough skill to balance that out.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that definition, and I'm laughing internally about how it's that's like an engineer's definition of
Yeah.
flow of this artistic experience.
You know, I think I'm a combination of engineer and because I really appreciate the engineer perspective.
Mhm.
It's interesting. I think my dad is very much so it's interesting because my dad is like he's really good at drawing and shit. But he's definitely an engineer. I mean, that was his job, like software engineer. Like he's so mathematical. And I think it's more common with Asians too, because they're, that's that's all they drill, right? They just learn a bunch of math. I didn't, but I mean I did, but I still sucked compared to other Asians. But yeah, my dad's like such an engineer, but he's also very good at drawing. But he's just so like plan everything to meticulous detail and very much like analytical, just so much of a schemer and a planner.
Mm.
Yeah. Anyways.
And you just made me think about I was thinking about my dad and the similarities I have with him. And it's interesting because I do think that I my typology is more oriented towards flow or this artistic thing. And yet I'm pretty rigid. Like I get into a routine and I just like keep it. And I
Yeah.
don't like deviating from it. Uh, and that's in the so it's like yeah, it is a combination of things.
Yeah. I don't know if you do this, but I'll go when I order from like a restaurant or whatever, I'll look at the menu and I'll be like, oh, maybe what do I want to get? What do I want to get? And then I end up getting the same thing I always get. So
I do that 85% of the time.
yeah. Yeah.
Uh, like yeah, if I find the thing that I love on the menu, then I will keep getting it. But every so often I like to try different things, so I will deviate and then maybe be disappointed or whatever.
I should have t got the same thing. Damn it. Yeah.
Or sometimes pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
I think that this is actually okay. I'm having two separate thoughts. I'll finish that what I was just saying. I think this is actually a really big issue for men today. That
The
there's
issue of
being an artist
okay.
rather than an engineer in
Yeah.
terms of typology. That there's a huge struggle that men are going through to figure out what it actually means to be a man and what masculinity is now. And it's like, you've got the traditional view of masculinity and masculine and feminine roles. And and then there was this pushback against that, where it was more like, yeah, just more relativity. This is like the postmodern view, I guess, of just like anything goes, it's all relative. You just do whatever. Basically it doesn't matter how masculine or how feminine you are. It doesn't matter, and everyone's different. And and now there's like a resurgence of the traditional view that's pushing back against that relativism. And it's like it's saying, wait a second, like actually there are differences between men and women, and we can honor those differences. And masculinity and femininity are not just social constructs, but like inborn. Um, and and again, it's like this pendulum swing where I see a lot of people going to extremes with it, and like the return of the traditional roles. To me, that's not, um, that's just another place to get stuck. It's like throwing the baby out with the bathwater of the previous realizations.
Hmm. So you would say that masculine and feminine are social constructs.
I'd say they're partially social constructs.
Okay.
What one of the things I loved about integral theory was that there's a recognition that every perspective is true but partial. That's what Ken Wilber would say.
Interesting. Because there's a hermetic law from the Kabbalion that says all truths are half-truths.
Hmm.
So I'm wondering maybe there's some parallel there.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I don't know if it's all perspectives are true but partial because some perspectives might just be completely false. But we could say probably all of the widely held worldviews are true but partial. They have some partial truth in them. And so yeah, I think it was actually really, really important for us to move in the direction of, oh wait, these things are social constructs, to say, for example, that like if a boy wanted to wear dresses and then to say like, well, you can't do that because you're a boy, that's a social construct.
Yeah.
And to me, ridiculous. It's like we should just be able to do whatever we want to do. Um, so yeah, so definitely there are social constructs there. I do think some of the things are inborn, whether that's like an evolutionary thing, or it's an individual thing. What I meant is whether it's evolutionarily applied to an entire sex or it's individual and maybe a little bit of both. I think there are generalities that apply to an entire sex, um, but I think the variance on the individual level is pretty great. And so, um, yeah, so I think there's this active discovery happening, and it's really messy, and there aren't a whole lot of like, at least not that I hear out there, really well balanced voices with this that acknowledge the partial truths in all these perspectives, and so that's what I would like to do here.
So I guess the question would be, well, I mean, I don't know the question, a question. How do artists find their way in this engineer-like world? Because there are still, it seems like the world runs on this type of engineer thinking, right? Like you can't really escape it. I mean, I guess you could. You could theoretically. But for the vast majority of people, that's probably not a good option, right?
Yes. Okay. Oh my God, I just had so many thoughts.
Yeah.
Um, Let me go pee first.
Okay. You want me to repeat the question?
Yes.
So a question that came to mind is, well, how does an artist type, especially men, right, who are struggling as an artist in an engineer world, how do they find their way as an artist? Because it seems like the world runs on this type of engineer like thinking and structures and all this stuff, right? You can't really escape it.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm gonna go in particular direction and then maybe go somewhere else. Um, have you heard of the Age of Aquarius? Do you know that whole thing?
It sounds familiar. Is this supposed to be the new age, right? Something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm no expert on it, but I just have heard people talk about it a bunch, and yes, it has to do with like the planet entering into this new age, humanity entering into this new age. I think of awakening, but also I think of femininity. Uh, and and uh, there's been this whole thing, which I guess is part of like a feminist movement or whatever, where people wear these shirts or have the slogan, "The future is female," which I don't like. I don't like it because I think it's a re I understand it. It's a reaction to the patriarchy and like this reality that's been constructed where exactly what we're talking about, where like the world revolves around this more masculine approach to life, this engineer approach to life, and that everything's structured this way. And so it's not actually it's very one-sided. It's not honoring of the the real complexity of the human being. And so what I would agree with though is I would say in a way, just like the age that we're entering into, uh, the future is feminine. I think that we're going to go through this rebalancing and that we are going through a rebalancing of the scales and in this exact way, like related to this, that this artistic, more feminine, flowing way of being, an emphasis on being rather than doing, that's coming into our reality. And not only like psychologically and in terms of our consciousness, but physically. Like it's going to be uh, required. It's a required shift in humanity because of AI. That at
Hmm.
some point AI is going to be doing so many of the things that we are currently doing. And then what's left for humans to do? Well, create.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because one of the first things that AI has replaced are artists
Yeah.
and music, well, possible musicians, right? You can create AI music too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I would say it's not particularly it's not particularly creative. Like it's sure it's like an amalgamation of styles crammed together, or like you can select the style and it can generate something. And I think I was thinking about this recently. I don't know if this is an apt analogy, but it reminds me of, I'm a drummer, and uh there when I was young, I think when I like first started drumming, really, that's when drum machines started coming out and becoming more of a thing. And then, now we're in this like complete electronic music revolution. And but back then there was a bumper sticker, drum machines have no soul. And there was like this whole pushback from analog drummers uh, who were just like, "Oh, I'm not going to listen to music with a drum machine in it," and that sort of thing. I was never like that exactly, but um, I think it'll be a similar sort of thing where we're going to have a whole class of music and art and whatever that's generated by AI, and it'll be pretty good. Like some of it'll be enjoyable, and it's like a thing you can get into. Just like now, I get into music that is 100% produced with electronics. But I also like bands, and it's still even then though the analogy kind of falls apart because it's still different because with an electronic music producer, they are still actively producing every sound in there. And it's coming from their own creative process rather than inputting some information into a machine and having it do all of it. So that is different. I don't even know what it's gonna be like, man. It's gonna be a crazy, crazy adjustment. that we're all going to go through in the next 30 years.
Hmm.
But what seems to be more or less guaranteed is that a ton of jobs, that anything that can be systematized will be done by AI, including therapy that can be systematized.
Right. E- yeah.
And that's why I think it's going to be even more valuable for humans in general, particularly though the artist type, but like everybody actually, to lean more into their artistry because that can't be replaced. Not really. Not yet. Not until we can generate real consciousness or whatever, which I don't really think can happen.
So so it sounds like artists are in a good place or will be in a good place in the next 30 years, possibly.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a bumpy road, man. I don't know if I'd say they'll be in a good place in 30 years, but in 100 years, sure. Because all the systems are going to have to be redone, and I don't know how money is going to work. Money will have to become a different thing.
Mm, okay. Okay. So capitalism.
Yeah,
We'll
yeah,
do what do you call it? The universal basic income? Is that what it?
yeah, maybe. Um, I guess, in my utopia, my idea of a utopia would be that everyone's basic needs are taken care of. That, I do believe we live in an abundant world and an abundant universe, and we can actually fairly easily take care of everybody, make sure that everyone has housing and food, um, and healthcare, and I guess education. I I have some feelings about that. That's a whole other topic. Um, but yeah, that I do believe that we can get to a point where all of that is just given. It's just supplied. I don't want it to be given by a centralized entity because I don't trust centralized entities. So I don't know exactly how that's all going to work, but some sort of decentralized entity, a decentralized society. Uh, but my mind's going places. Um, but yeah, this is going to have to happen. And then life, I mean, I would say what is life in general, but like what will life be? We have to be able to find meaning and purpose. And if robots and AI are doing all of the systematized things and way better than any human can do it, way more efficiently, then the only place to find meaning and purpose is creativity and service.
In relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I kind of want to go back to the original question, maybe
Sure.
ask it in a different way.
Sure.
Um, for the person who's listening to this, I mean, I don't know if I have any answers here, and I'm like trying to extract something from you here. But for the person who is an artist and they might be struggling with the way things are currently, how does this person be, since we're talking about being and versus doing, how should this person be in the world right now? Like, do they take on certain engineer traits? Maybe that's necessary. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's about pushing back and um yeah, like how does one be an artist today?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. I went on the whole thing about where the world's going. But uh mm, real quick though, but the point of that whole tangent was just that I think that um, this way of being is actually extremely important to to lean into in yourself. And if this is your type, if this is what feels good and natural to you, um, then I highly recommend leaning into it now, and that's going to help birth what comes next. What comes next will not be birthed by engineers. They're currently trying to birth it, and it's it's a mess. It's just a mess. And I don't totally I mean, there's like healthy and unhealthy expressions of the engineer and the artist, but we've got a lot of unhealthy engineers who are holding the reins right now, and we need a lot of healthy artists and engineers to counterbalance that.
Yeah.
Um, but yes, to your question today, it's a tough question, and I think this comes up with clients a lot actually, because the reality is that this is the world we live in today. These are the systems that are in place today. And if you want to lean into your creativity and artistry, you kind of have to. Probably most of the time, there are exceptions to this rule, but you have to play this game that we're in. You have to make enough money to support yourself, and then once you're supporting yourself, then hopefully you have enough time and energy to lean into your creative pursuits. Um, I'm super fortunate in a lot of ways, but the fact that my passion is this allows me to lean into my artistry most of the time and make money doing it. Because because I view therapy as an art and I can just do that. Uh, Unfortunately, if your passion is music, which I'm also passionate about music, but if your passion is solely music, it's going to be hard to to make money doing that. It's not impossible and certainly doable, but I I feel for the I feel for you. I feel for that person. And and maybe it's necessary to make some kind of sacrifices or to engage with an engineer sort of approach to certain things just to make sure that you can make ends meet. And I also like some more idealistic ideas of finding a community of people. Maybe there's some community that you can live in where people are able to support each other. I know there are a lot of creative things that people are trying to do out there. Uh, but yeah, it's kind of a tricky situation to be in, an artist in an
Right.
engineer world.
Right. Right. I do like what you said at the end, right? Like there's creative ways of living that probably I have never even thought of, right? And I do think this is where maybe you want to lean in even more into the creative side and think outside the box about living situations, not only living situations, but like um I heard this story once of some guy that was I think they were a musician, right? And they're just trying to get gigs and they couldn't really get a lot of gigs. But they called this one place, some bar or some whatever it was, and they're like, "Hey, like listen, um I don't know if you guys are even wanting like musicians or gigs over there, but how about I make you a deal? Um if I bring in X amount of people, like I'll do like you don't have to pay me or anything. But if I bring in however many people, I get a percentage of the proceedings from alcohol from or something like that. They kind of made this like very like resourceful, like creative deal. And I guess because of their resourcefulness, they were able to bring in some people. and they got like a good amount of money from that deal. Um, so I think that there are definitely like very creative ways of d doing things, right? Um, not that it's that's a solution, right? Because it's like, well, how do you come up with these creative ideas, right? Uh, but
Well,
yeah, yeah,
and some of those things, I mean, with the internet over the last 20 years, and now with the emergence of AI, like there's gonna be different avenues that someone can take that might feel good to them. Um, it's so interesting just the phases of things, and maybe also with technology how fast things move too. But just seeing how these different phases with social media and YouTube, and um, it's like a new sort of way of creative expression and making money comes up, and then everyone starts to do it, and then that becomes the gold standard, and then it gets stale, and now there's a new thing, and it just keeps happening like that,
right.
which is maybe both frustrating and scary, but also potentially exciting and cool.
Oh, no. And I don't know how much time you got here.
Uh, like 10 or 15 minutes.
10. You think I could ask another question? Because
Yeah. Oh,
you mentioned about a healthy artist versus an unhealthy artist.
yeah.
And I think maybe teasing that out could be helpful.
It sure could be.
Yeah, maybe we can't do it in 10 minutes here. So maybe that could be another episode.
I mean, we could try.
Yeah.
Yeah, what would be the qualities? I mean, I don't know if this is totally right. This is just me uh spitballing here, but
Yeah.
it seems to me like in a particular way, what makes the expression healthy is it not being extreme, which means it's being tempered by the other side. So, like the engineer, the a healthy engineer approach, I think would have more flexibility. Uh, and then the healthy artist approach would probably include more structure. And maybe the engineer could stand to feel emotions more, and allow, engage in some sort of emotional exploration or an exploration of their unconscious and how that impacts their decisions and the systems that they create and all that stuff. That would be like more of an artistic approach to their engineer approach. And then maybe for some artists, it would be helpful to, yeah, not to have more. It's not about shame, judgment, maybe not even control necessarily, but to recognize that structure can be part of the flow. And that there's like a way, and this is what I'm doing. It's like a way of discovering that your way. Like it might look different for you, as especially as an artist, it might look different for you how structure gets implemented and how it feels. But that how for the artist how it feels is maybe the most important thing. Like for me, it
Yeah.
has to feel in alignment. It feels good when it's in alignment.
Yeah. An engineer would definitely not speak in those terms. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
I
don't
like
know.
that.
Is
Yeah.
that
Yeah, no, that I think that's great. I'm figuring out this stuff for myself, right?
and
And Yeah.
Sorry, I just I have to also make sure that I finish the thought about masculinity because, well, because it's important. And like I said, I think a lot of men are struggling with this. And uh, I guess what I want to say, okay, so maybe I've said this before. I believe everyone has a different mixture of masculine and feminine energies in them. Men tend to have more masculine energy, women tend to have more feminine energy. Those are the generalities that are true. But that you could meet a person that's like 50-50, a man or woman. You could meet a man that's more feminine. You could meet a woman that's more masculine. Doesn't matter to me. That's like everyone's different in this way. Um, however, I think it's important to know yourself and to know what approximately, it's not, you don't have to have exact percentages, but approximately where you're at with it. And so, like I said, for me, I've known for many years that masculinity feels more like home to me in my body, in my experience. And it's hard to define exactly what that means, but it just, I say it and my whole being resonates. Just like, oh, yep, that's true. But then I have this artistic thing and this like feminine flow sort of thing. And and again, my own bias, but I it seems to me like life is more feminine in a particular way. Like just the flow of life. It is like the flow of life is the feminine part, and then, consciousness itself, um, open spacious awareness is like the masculine part, the Shiva and Shakti and all that. This is how it's framed in spiritual communities, that feminine energy or femininity is energy and form, and masculinity is awareness and formlessness. That's a maybe a entirely different conversation, but but I just had to throw that in there real quick. Um, but anyway, it's like uh it doesn't mean that you're not. Well, first of all, I think it's basically meaningless to get stuck in the idea of I'm not masculine enough or I'm not feminine enough. So I'll just put that out there, that's, you could just like throw that in the garbage. That doesn't matter at all. Um, because it's entirely unique to you. However, there was something about it for myself that I haven't actually put this into words, so I don't know, and maybe I'd be curious about your experience too of this, but that, like, yes, there was a judgment that I wasn't masculine enough, and so because of that, I was exploring, masculine teachings and practices and whatnot. But I think there was some kind of partial truth in it, that like I wasn't being in alignment with myself. That was the main thing, that I wasn't being in alignment with myself. The funny thing is that, thinking I wasn't masculine enough was pushing me out of alignment.
Interesting. Yeah.
Like if masculinity, if a part of masculinity, it's often framed this way, is it's like a groundedness in just like owning yourself, just like owning who you are unapologetically. That
Right.
if you happen to have more of a feminine expression, or like this artistic quality in your being, that where you're more into flow than structure, but you own that, then you're like more masculine now, even though you're leaning into femininity.
Paradox. Yeah. Yeah, that is kind of ironic. Yeah. Uh, I kind of do resonate because I've always kind of, I don't know, there's huge talk about masculinity growing up, and then Asians, I guess, have their own version of masculinity. It's not so, but I think generally they're kind of viewed more passive, not as strong-willed or not as direct, you know. So I think definitely the last, I don't know, 10-ish, not 10 years, 6 or 7 years, I've definitely explored the topic of masculinity, especially because of dating and things like that. I think that those are very, very correlated topics. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm still figuring it out, like what it means to be masculine. And I do think the talk about uh polarities have helped. I think people like No More Mr. Nice Guy, if you're familiar with Dr. Robert Glover, and people like him have helped me. But I would say the more inner work that I do, the more anger I integrate, the more I feel like myself, and the less I have to ask myself the questions about masculinity.
Mm.
Not that I do think there's a lot of benefit to these things, to learning about the frameworks, like the psychoeducation portion of that. I think that's really necessary too. I've just noticed for myself, the more anger I integrate, the more shame I let go of or transmute, and whatever word you want to call it, the more I feel more like myself.
And then those questions become irrelevant.
They're less important.
Mm.
I think I could still benefit from, again, like having a conscious reading or a listening or a teaching about that. Yeah, but like I think the emotional charge of whether or not I'm masculine or am I being man enough, I think that tends to kind of just fade.
And I just detected another like hour-long conversation that we could have
Oh
about this.
yeah.
Maybe in particular with the Trump administration, and there's like this wave of this wave that's happening in the culture around re-embracing traditional masculinity. Uh, and just like some things that go along with that, like being anti-therapy, for example. Like, oh, I'm not going to go to
Yeah.
therapy. That's not, men don't do that.
Right. Right.
And like not being in touch with your emotions and stuff like that. And it's like I got a lot to say about that. But for another time.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so yes, what you said, there was something important about that. You said integrating anger, letting go of shame,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then you feel more like yourself. And I think maybe this is true. I don't know. Ultimately, it was all helpful going through all the masculine, feminine teaching stuff. But if I had solely focused on feeling feelings and integrating feelings and not gone into that, maybe the same result would have happened faster.
Interesting. Well,
Maybe.
I don't know. Maybe.
I,
Right.
it's hard to say. Um, and and we're gonna be ending here in a moment because I'm gonna go to a rage room. So I'll be integrating some anger, and I think you wanted to talk about that, but maybe
Maybe. Yeah. Maybe next time.
yeah. So let's see. Is there any last?
No, I'm just always surprised of where these conversations go, and
I
where they start and where they end up. So,
don't even remember where we started.
birthdays.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh shit.
Yeah.
Uh, so what I will say I'm thinking about my clients and myself too. Um, huh. Oh man, I'm going off on a whole thing. Um, and now I'm thinking about like everyone that's diagnosed with a mental illness. I don't know. I don't know if this is totally true, but this is just like what's where my mind is going. I actually think like maybe a really, really significant portion of suffering and mental health distress that people are experiencing today, and maybe this is like a huge part of the quote unquote mental health crisis, is this exact thing that we're talking about. It's like that all of these people want to be living more like an artist, unconsciously. That they might not be consciously aware of that. Um, but artists feel deeply. Artists tend to be more sensitive in terms of their intuition, their senses, their emotions, and the whole society and all of our families basically have been pushing us to not be that way and to repress things and suppress things and all that. So yeah, so my mind is just going in this direction that maybe this is like an extremely important thing. That if you are one of those people who who is really sensitive and feels things deeply and maybe is very intuitive and you may or may not view yourself as creative, but um, that you might be an artist. And it doesn't mean you don't have to be a painter to be an artist. You don't have to be a musician to be an artist. You could be anything. But just to have this orientation and that's actually really, really it's a gift, it's a strength. But if you don't know that you're that and you're trying to fit yourself into this other mold, then you're going to suffer. And so this is like a really important thing to realize about yourself and then to maybe work with your therapist or whoever um, on uncovering and discovering what this means for you and how you live your life. But what I encounter is a lot of people, basically 100% of them, coming to therapy thinking that we're going to engage in a systematic process of fixing their problems. And then they meet me and they're like, uh-oh. And then I'm just like trying to get them to realize they're an artist and actually their system isn't going to respond well to that. And so you've got to do it this other way. That's a lot more abstract and weird and uncomfortable.
Interesting. Interesting.
And again, maybe that is a jumping off point for an entirely different conversation too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But we will stop there for today.
Huh? Good talk.
Yeah. Goodbye,
Right on.
everybody.